Council. My name is Councillor Theo Butt-Phillip. I'm the chair of this committee. I chair this committee in my capacity as Executive Lead Member, Transformation, Human Resources and Localities. To enable the smooth running of the meeting, I have a few announcements. Today's meeting will be run using the webcasting system via Microsoft Teams. Committee members and key officers are physically present in the Luttrell Room in County Hall. Other elected members and members of the public and officers may physically or remotely join the meeting to speak on specific agenda items or to observe. The agenda pack is available via mod.gov or directly from the council website, link which has been sent out to members. Please remember to turn off your microphones and cameras when not speaking. Please be advised that the meeting is being audio-video recorded. As agendas are now viewed electronically, could I kindly request that members and officers refer to page numbers published agenda pack to assist all present finding the appropriate information. Finally, there are no planned fire drills today, and in the event of a fire alarm, please follow the fire exit signs and congregate in the car park. If you will require any assistance with this, please speak to a member of the Democratic Services teams. So, hate it when people are late, don't you? Item 1 is apologies for absence. I have apologies for absence from Emily Pearlston. Do we have other apologies? No other apologies. Councillor Fothergill.
You know that Councillor Furbrick is on her way here.
Very good.
Maybe the last to arrive. Yeah, I think that's the problem.
We look forward to seeing her when she... Okay, item 2, minutes from the previous meeting held on the 8th of October 2025. Do we have any corrections minutes? Which? Councillor Leigh.
I just make a comment that I really like the way the minutes are laid out. So when members asked a question, how that was responded to is actually included in the minutes under that question. I found that very helpful.
Good. That has been heard by them. Appreciate that. Do I have a proposer for those minutes? Proposed Councillor Anne Kendall. Do I have a seconder? Seconded Councillor Liz Leishon. All in favour? Against? No, that's unanimous. Excellent. Item 3, declarations of interest. Councillor Redmond.
Thank you, Chair. It's a new one. In my role with the LGA, I've been appointed to the Salisbury Committee, which is as an employee representative. It's not pecuniary today, but it just needs to be noted because it is a relatively new thing. It's not on my register yet.
Very much. Councillor Stanton.
Not a pecuniary interest, but as mentioned last time, I'm Director of Hague Group and they're not a Harry deals with the job valuation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stanton. Anyone else? No. Excellent. That brings us on to item 4, which is public question time. We have no public questions submitted in advance, and looking around, I don't think there's anyone who wants to ask me for permission to ask a late question. So we will move on. Item 5 is the annual pay policy statement, and I would like to invite Sarah Lewis, our Total Pay and Reward Manager, and Sari Bryce, Head of Employee Relations and Inclusion, to give an update on this. Over to Sarah and Sari.
Good morning, everyone. So today I'm going to be presenting the proposed pay policy statement for Somerset Council, financial year 2026 and 27. The pay policy statement sets out the Council's approach to pay policy in line with Section 38 of the Localism Act 2011 and related statutory guidance. It ensures transparency in how pay is determined for all employees, including chief officers and the It outlines the relationship between the highest and the lowest paid employees, and the statement must be published annually and approved by full council before start of each financial year. So therefore, what's being proposed today is that the HR committee recommends that the recommendations, are to consider Appendix A, pay policy statement itself, and recommend that the Chief Executive submit to full council for approval effective from the 1st of April 2026. Please note that in-year amendments may be required once the 2026-27 pay award has been agreed. So the key updates for the 26-27 pay policy statement. So overall, it's been made more user-friendly and easy to read and understand. I won't go through the report in detail, but some of the key updates are updated salary data, including following 2025-26 pay award for Green Book staff. The coroner's pay position is clarified, noting ongoing negotiations. And the council's grading structure is under review as part of the pay and reward programme, with the current structure remaining in place until at least April 27, and this is reflected in the statement. Pay policy statement was circulated to recognise trade unions for comment. We received feedback from one trade union. They felt that there should be increased reference to collective agreements for trade unions for negotiation of pay and conditions. And the same union also noted ongoing negotiations related to the coroner's pay. So the statement aligns with the Equality Act 2010, Accounts and Audit Regulations 2015, and the Local Government Transparency Code 2015. Happy to answer any questions and provide any further clarity if there are any.
Councillor Lation.
Yeah, I have already mentioned this to you, my concern about the current annual revenue budget figure that is in the introduction on page 28 of the ModGov. Be amending that. Other than that, I found it easier to read. Just want us to be absolutely sure that the scale of our budget and our staffing numbers are as accurate as possible.
Yes, absolutely. So that, for anyone who hasn't found it yet, that relates to reference to our current annual revenue budget being 230 million. And if that were the case, our budget gap would be giving us more than just sleepless nights. It is, in excess of 600 million. So we'll have to get that. Any other points or comments? So I've seen Sarah Wakefield and then Lee Redmond.
Yes, I hope you don't mind me asking a question. It's out of ignorance, I'm afraid. I'm not even sure if this is the right place in the meeting to ask it, but the pay policy seems to be important here. I was asked at a parish council yesterday evening why our staff receive an annual increase, which I said is negotiated by unions, when they just for coming to the office, because I think there's no separate idea of increasing pay based on performance. And I think somewhere in the papers for this meeting, and I apologise if it's not this one, I did read it, that we don't have a performance-related pay policy in this council. I just wanted to, because people are going to ask this, why pay goes up annually when we're in a financial emergency. I just think we need to have it explained clearly. I'm sorry to ask this, but it is the sort of thing that you get asked by members of the public. So I just wondered if this is the right place. If it's not, say so. But...
No, I'm perfectly happy with that. I could give the politician's answer, but I'm going to defer to Dawn Betteridge, our Service Director for HR and OD, for a technical answer.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Wakefield, for the query. The reason that our staff receive an increase in pay every year is because of the cost of living award that is given for our pay. So we have national pay bargaining arrangements. This isn't done locally. Our council is part of those national pay bargaining agreements. And the national employers consult with all councils around the country every year and obviously negotiate the deal with the trade unions. So that's why pay changes during the year. In previous years, it's been around sort of 2.5%. Sometimes it's lower than that. The trade unions are currently just negotiating for the pay award for 26-27, and those discussions have just started. So it's likely to be around the end of February before the employers come back on the trade unions' request for an increase for 26-27. And to give you some idea, they're looking at a 10% award for staff or £3,000, whichever is the higher. And there are some other criteria as well, which the Unison, GMB and Unite have put a joint request in, or an offer, not an offer, but they've put what their requirements are to the national employers, and that will be addressed in February, March. Ideally, we have the pay awards agreed by the 1st of April. You'll be aware that in previous years, the national pay awards have sometimes taken right the way through to November, December, or within that financial year, and then we have to back pay our staff to the 1st of April. So the trade unions are moving a little bit faster this year, but whether or not we see the award agreed by the 1st of April is yet to be seen. But the answer is basically it's a cost of living increase, and it's nationally negotiated, and we make a provision for that in our MTFP. The provision that we've made for next year is in the region of 3%.
Yeah, and just to be very clear, that the figures that Dawn has referenced, the 10% or 3,000 figure, is what the unions have requested. The 3% is what we have currently budgeted, and now we have a negotiation. That's a nationally conducted negotiation. We don't negotiate that locally. You can't assume from what we've budgeted, what they've requested, that will tell you what the ultimate figure will be. We'll see what negotiations do. Yes, so I'm going to go to the Councillor Wakefield. Oh, okay, they've got the same question.
Right, so I did read somewhere that we don't do performance-related pay. So how do we reward people? And I don't know if it's in this pay policy or not. I'm sorry, I can't see it now. But our pay policy is what the public will think. This is what you're agreeing to do for your staff. And I just wondered, because somebody I was talking to at the Parish Council, well, I work in a private business and we're not having any pay increase this year because the business isn't doing very well. And, there is that issue when we're a council in difficulty.
Just to answer that directly, we don't have performance-related pay in this authority. We have time-served incremental progression. So in one of the appendices of the pay policy, you'll see our national pay spine with all the grades and the spinal points within that. So the job evaluation scheme that we have indicates a number of points for every role in the council. Those roles are then applied to that pay scale, and that determines the pay for that job. Once an individual gets to the top of their pay scale, they remain fixed at that point unless they change their roles, get promoted, for example. And the only other way that they receive any increase in their pay is through the National Pay Award, which is the cost of living. And say, for example, that was 2.5%, that would be applied to all of the points that had been agreed across the pay spine with the trade unions. So yes, we as part of the pay and grading review, clearly we are going to look at a new job evaluation scheme, and that will come in later in the agenda, and a new pay and grading structure. But it is not on the table at the moment to consider performance-related pay, which I think is probably more commonly seen in the private sector than in local government. There have been local councils that have applied performance-related pay, but it's not something we're recommending as the right thing for Somerset Council. So just to be very clear, incremental time-served progression. So if somebody joins the council, they would normally join at the bottom of their pay grade, and then each year they would go up one spinal point until they reach the top of that pay grade automatically. The only reason that they would not receive it is if somebody and I'll check with my colleagues, but if somebody was on, say, a final written warning, or there was a particular issue with their performance, then it may be that their spinal point would not go up. And it depends when they join the council as well. But I'm going to hand over to Sari, who's probably going to articulate that much more clearly than I just have.
Good morning, everybody. Sari Bryce, Head of ER Inclusion and Policy. Just to pick up on what Dawn said, I'll come back to the performance bit, but we also have some grades of spot salaries, so it's a single spot point. So grades 8 and above do not get incremental increases. They're on a spot point, and you'll see that on one of the appendices on the pay policy statement. In terms of withholding increments, in my experience, that is highly unusual, but it is something that we could do in certain circumstances, but I don't ever recall having done that.
Okay, I think we, if I may, I think we've started to veer on stuff that is in item 9, more suitably sits there. So if we want to explore it more, and there is time, I think we'll do that under item 9, which is a verbal update on the pay and grading programme, which might provide an opportunity to explore this more than this item. But thank you very much for the questions. Do we have any other questions on the pay policy statement? Yes, of course.
Thank you. Maybe shooting a little bit early, but I think the question I'm asking him is, first of all, in relation to this policy. We've sort of agreed as we've gone through when it comes to other policy changes that we have an indication of what's changed in this one compared to the last one, and I don't think that's here in this one. It's a long policy and it makes lots of points. The reason I'm asking the question is I'm seeking clarification. Dawn, forgive me, you said that we'll be talking about it later, but job evaluation, and specifically around the decision to the Hay job evaluation, which is on page 31 and 32. So my question is, what's changed between the previous one and this one, and why, as I think there is a change, are we looking to change when potentially my understanding is that the unions, specifically Unison, have been quite firm in their belief that we should maintain with the NJC policy across the board? Who wants that one?
I think that is an item for item 9, really.
It's mentioned if we agree this policy, Chair, on page 31 and 32, we've formally agreed to that change, unless I'm corrected.
Sorry.
So yes, currently the Hay job evaluation is one of the schemes that's used as part of our job evaluation process. We also use what's known as the New Somerset scheme, which is based on the Greater London Provincial Council scheme. Now that position will continue until such time as a decision is taken, which is part of the pay and grading programme, in terms of which scheme or schemes the council will continue to use. But at this point in time, there is no decision formally made to change that.
Forgive me, Chair, just it's easy for me to become confused, but we're about to agree a pay policy, a pay statement, which makes clear, as far as I can see, a change. Does it talk about the?
No, it doesn't make a change, Councillor Redmond. It is a reflection of where we are now. We currently use 2 different schemes: the Hay for some, the New Somerset scheme for others. Under item 9, we will discuss proposed changes, which is what you are referring to, but this does not reflect any changes, and the final decision on that change has yet to be made.
Okay. So forgive me, so item 9, is that the bit of the agenda that I haven't got? ModGov?
Item 9, pay and grading programme update.
There's an agenda item, but with no information about what we'll be discussing. So how are members supposed to know that that's where we're taking that point?
it's not a decision for this committee. So that's what you're referring to is not a committee decision for this committee under our constitution. But there will be an update on that programme.
Item 9 is.
Okay. So at that point, when we will have the opportunity to discuss that element.
Yes. Councillor Fothergill.
Thank you very much. So it's an item of clarification. So page 38. Election payments. No additional payments are made by the council for election duties. You might be able to help me with this, Chair, because I think you've been involved in the process of charging parish councils for additional costs for elections. I thought we told the parishes that we were going to be paying for election duties covering those elections, and yet it says we don't make any payments. When we've gone to the parish council,
I thought I knew where it was going, and then I got lost.
When we've gone to the parish council to say that we will be charging you for elections in the future, this is to cover additional costs of salary, but there is no additional cost.
No, this refers to, I think this refers to the fact that we don't pay, for example, the returning officer extra for being the returning officer. It does not relate to the fact that we don't pay polling station staff.
It's a very badly, sorry.
No,
very
sorry.
badly worded.
Yes, Graham may be able to help me here. No additional payments are made by the council for election duties, full stop. Is that correct?
It's a very valid question. That is not correct. So we will amend that in the paper, because we do make some payments to staff for doing election duties, and we run an elections payroll to cover those off. So we will need to amend that section. So Sari, can you pick that one up, please?
Yes, sorry, I just want to check what's actually in the Localism Act in terms of what, because we have to make a statement, I believe, around this, but I just need to check what that statement needs to be, and then we'll come back and we'll with that amended paragraph to make it clearer who we are referring to, because I think Councillor Philip is correct. I think it is the returning officers.
I think that needs clarifying before we sign this through, because we're about to sign through that no additional payments will be made by the council for election duties. That can't be correct if we are required to pay them.
Yeah, so that's fine. I mean, we've acknowledged that is incorrect and needs to be corrected before it goes to full council. It won't be able to come back to this body before that, but we'll make sure that change is made and circulated to members of the committee before that happens.
So when we vote this paper through, can we just
We'll acknowledge that fact, yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Councillor Purbrick.
Apologies, and sorry for being late. I seem to mess up a few people being able to drive properly. If this has been answered already, I'll watch the recording back. But I just wanted some clarity around. We talk about 4,700 staff, and there's a lot of people who've 2P'd in or have various other different terms because of how their employment started. How many people out of that 4,700 does this policy apply to? Just a ballpark, yeah, is it like 10%?
All of them. So that refers to our council headcount of staff. So this pay policy is reflective of our whole workforce. So it's just a standard policy that we publish once a year, just to make sure that we're very, very transparent about how we manage our pay for our employees. So the numbers of headcount or FTE were taken at the time that the report was drafted, and that will reflect all people that are currently employed by Somerset Council.
Sorry, just to
So it
clarify.
doesn't include agency workers, for example. It's people that are actually on our books.
Sorry, I think I asked the question badly, Chair. What I'm asking is the people who are 2P'd in on other terms and conditions, so they're not covered by this. Are they additional to the, are there 4,700 people employed by us on these terms and conditions? And then extra people who've 2P'd in or have the NHS conditions, or what ballpark of people are actually on our standard T's and C's?
Sorry.
Thank you, councillor Purbrick. I'm not sure that we've got that breakdown, but we can get it for you. There, obviously the LGR ones are all subject to, so the sort of roughly 1,500 that transferred from districts are covered by this policy statement because they are on Green Book terms and conditions. But you're right, there will be probably, and this is going to be a guess on my part, I would have thought some, because we've got public health nursing, which are not covered by this. So there's probably somewhere, I would say probably, I don't know, under 500. But we'll get we can see if we can get the figures for you, but I'll have to defer to other colleagues to provide that for you.
Okay, anyone else? In which case, we need to go to the recommendations, which, I find my right place. We are asked to consider the report and recommend the pay policy statement is submitted to full council for approval. Obviously, we have covered two areas where we wish to see changes before that happened. So for the record, those changes are, there is a reference to the council's annual revenue budget, which needs to be corrected. And the section on election payments also needs to be corrected. So subject to those changes being made, and they will be circulated to members of this committee when they are made, are we happy to recommend that the pay policy statement is submitted to full council for approval? Do I have a proposer for that? Someone? Councillor Leishon? Do we have a seconder? Councillor Oakes? All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? One abstention, but that's clearly carried. Thank you all very much. That brings us on to item 6, which is HR policies, where we have a number of these to consider in the usual way. Sorry, I should have said thank you to Sari and Sarah for their work on the pay policy statement. Forgive me, please, for not having done that. But thank you. And then that brings us on to item 6, HR policies. So I would like to invite Michelle Anderson, our Employee Relations Manager, to present policies, please.
Good morning, Chair and members. In line with the policy plan, I just wanted to give you a brief update with regards to, you may have noted on the policy plan, it also stated that we would be bringing our flexi time policy. We have removed that from the policy plan because through feedback and consultation with trade unions, as well as staff groups, we will be looking to turn that into guidance and not a policy. So I just wanted to note that in case anybody was expecting that to come this month.
So what's the significance of that decision? What's the difference between a policy and a guidance?
So guidance will be, I suppose to describe the difference, a bit less formal, I suppose, and open to change. Can you, sorry.
We have a number of HR guidance documents. Some of them support policies. So there's a policy that's sat there with guidance in behind it. Some of them are literally just about guidance for how managers can support staff or manage a particular situations. And as I say, the trade unions, interestingly, so this has not come from us as the employer, were very keen that this one was not a policy and that was moved over to guidance. I think probably they felt that allowed greater flexibility for managers to be able to manage staff rather than to have something that's a bit more rigid that's set out in a policy. but I'm guessing that that's what's the feedback that was given, hence why they were looking for something less rigid.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. Sorry, I
Have you-
interrupted. Back to you, Michelle.
No, that's fine. And yes, to confirm, one of the issues with it being policy is that it can't be applied in the same way in different services because of the nature of the service, frontline staff, plus back office, etc. that recognise that. So moving on to the policies that we're bringing to committee today. We're bringing 6 policies that we have reviewed and we will be asking for your endorsement on. And we'll be bringing one further policy, which is a new policy, which we will be asking the committee to approve. So the policies that we have reviewed, these have all been done in consultation with trade unions, and trade unions have agreed and approved all of the policies that I'm presenting this morning. They've also been done in consultation with a variety of staff groups, managers, and other colleagues in HR. All have been benchmarked against other policies with other councils to look and try and share best practice. So the first 6 that we've reviewed, there are minimal changes. So the first one relates to the adoption leave policy. And what we have done in this policy is there's one notable change, and that's the change of contractual adoption pay, levelling up from 6 weeks for the first 6 weeks at 90% to 100%. That supports the commitment really to strengthen our family-related policies.
Michelle, Councillor Fothergill seems quite keen to come in,
Apologies.
so I'm
Sorry.
waiting.
I was trying to raise this at the beginning because I think it affects all 6 policies. I'm just interested to understand the benchmarking, why we've chosen Devon and North West Leicestershire as the benchmarks. I thought benchmarks were sort of wider than just let's compare it with one other, because I'm sure we can always find one other where it is an improvement, but there must be others where it's not. So I'm just interested, why have we chosen these as benchmarks?
Thank you, Councillor Fothergill. So the benchmark here with Devon is because we made some changes based on the Devon policy, some improvements that we made, but in just around the wording, we do systematically benchmark against the South West councils. So we share with all the South West councils, and I should probably reflect this in future that we, on the summary, that we do automatically benchmark against Wiltshire, Dorset, Cornwall, etc. So we do much wider. And that's just to look for how they present the policy, how is there anything that they're capturing that we should be thinking about, and kind of where we sit with what we've got really and how we inform our policy. But yes, it is wider.
I'm happy if it's against the South West Council's benchmark, but just to choose one other authority just seems a bit targeted.
So thank you, Councillor. So we will in future list all of the other councils that we've benchmarked against. Some have informed change and some less so. So on this one in particular, there was a bit more change informed by the Devon one, but I will list them all in future.
Thank you, Michelle. It's helpful.
Thank you. Carry on.
Thank you. So in relation to the adoption policy, what we have inserted is the paragraph around our commitment as a council to supporting the balancing work and family life for our employees. And there is that change of the contractual adoption pay, which is the levelling up from the 6 weeks at 90% to the up to the 100%. You may have noted in the paper that the financial implication of that, the cost is around just under £30,000 annually based on data that we've had for the last 2 years. There are no further significant changes to that policy.
Okay, any questions on that? Yes, Councillor Purbrick.
So, yeah, just questions really in terms of how we're establishing that average. There's a reference to we're talking about an average of 100, and that is taken from some average pays between the 1st of April 24 to, sorry, 23 to 24, I think, but our staff numbers have changed considerably over the last couple of years. So I'm just wondering, one, where that average comes from. Is it from the same period as the average salaries, and how is that then being reflected by our shrinking workforce? And also, are we looking at the demographics of the workforce, or is it just kind of a finger in the air? It was about 100 a couple of years ago, so we think it's 100 now, because that 100 doesn't seem to have a time frame attached to it. So just trying to understand where the stats come from, please.
Thank you, councillor. So for the stats, what we looked at is we looked at the what we were paying out in maternity, we looked at the finances and what we've paid. We did look at the demographics, and we looked at any changes in the demographic of the kind of range that are likely to use this policy. There were no significant changes in the demographics. We also looked at the headcount and any changes in headcount, so it wasn't informed. It's a really difficult one because we can never project exactly how many people, but we were confident that that does accurately reflect and had finances support.
So where it says, sorry, on page 57.9, it says the estimate is calculated based on an average of 100 employees, and then separately that the average weekly pay figures are recorded between 1st of April 24 and 31st of March 25. So that average of 100 employees, is that from that same period? It just, where they're separated out, I just couldn't quite figure out where that average is from, or is it just an entirely separate calculation based on everything that you've just said? I think it's just useful for clarity. So if we're looking at the numbers next year and they don't add up, we can look back to see how we might want to change that calculation in future.
I think for me the question, same question though, is that 100, is that an assumed average, i.e. we're assuming an average of 100, or is it actually, it was an average of 100 over a period of years?
It was an average of around 100 over a number of years. So it is, we've gone as precise as we possibly can. So we're not expecting that figure to be vastly different. Obviously, we can't determine exact figures or what pay grades people may be on taking maternity this year, for example. But yes, it was as precise as we could get.
But it doesn't take into account the reduction in the workforce.
These figures were taken prior to the 1st of April. So yes, there will be a slight change again. No, apologies, Chair. They were taken after the 1st of April. These figures were updated. So no, it has taken into account the size of the workforce.
Thank you very much. Councillor Deschamps.
Just connected to that, I think we should acknowledge that the majority of the workforce in local authority is female.
Yeah. Okay, carry on, Michelle.
Thank you. So that's the adoption policy. The next policy, apologies, is the maternity policy, which is very similar in terms of the changes that we've made. So again, we've inserted the family friendly clause, and we have also linked it to our proposed new policy, which is the fertility treatment policy. And again, the main change here was again that levelling up of the first 6 weeks that are currently paid at 90% salary to the 100%. And apologies, I just realised an error. So the calculation for this is for the maternity is the just under £30,000. For adoption, if I could just go back one moment, we've only actually had, it was very difficult to give a figure because it very rarely has been used. It was only used once, a total of 3 times in the last 2 years. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Wakefield.
Apologise if I missed this when you were explaining it about the adoption leave. When you say levelling up, what do you mean exactly? Is that what people generally get across the country, or is it, who is it levelling up with?
Thank you, councillor. So the levelling up really is referring to when our 5 predecessor councils, some of those councils did offer 100% fully. So we're actually levelling up to our own staff really in the various terms we've got.
We would already have that, would they? Because
It did, yes.
Carry on.
Thank you. If there are no other questions on maternity, moving on, it's the parental bereavement leave. And again, there are just some additions in terms of some wording that we've added in, supportive additions, and linking to parental bereavement form and helpful support available. And again, this was something that we worked quite closely in consultation with our staff, our parental network and staff groups. That we've also included the section in section 3 of the policy, the returning to work after parental bereavement leave and the right to return to the same job.
Thank you. Councillor Fothergill.
Thank you. Really important policy, and for those that fall back on it, I think it's absolutely critical. So I'd say my question, it comes back to, why have we chosen North West Leicestershire, which is not part of South West Councils? I think it's part of East Midlands Councils. So what is it? Why have we gone to North West Leicestershire to benchmark this policy? I'm just really fascinated to know, and it doesn't fit with the previous answer.
Thank you, councillor. So again, we always benchmark with all the South West policies, but we do look much wider. So we do research and look to see if any other councils have got any particularly interesting. Not all councils had this policy. So there were less councils that had a like for like type of policy that covered this. There would have been content that was within the North West Leicestershire one that was of interest really, just to benchmark wider. So we always go further out. We look at Gateshead, we look at all sorts of people, and that's really to help just inform our policy. So I'll be, as I mentioned, I will put all the councils that we do benchmark against in future, so you're better informed. But we do often and would continue to go wider than South West.
Councillor Redmond.
Thank you. Just a bit of clarification, really. By including North West Leicestershire District Council in this statement today, are we saying that we, by making reference to them, we're becoming an exemplar? As I suppose, do we believe that our policy is better than all the rest, and just using that as a reference to where they used to be best and we're now the same as them?
Thank you, councillor. I think we aim to be an exemplar in all the policies that we review and that we write. And I guess what we're trying to do is we want our policies to be accessible. We want them to be easily understood. We want them to be supportive, and we really want a strong suite of family policies. So what we're looking at is they had a good policy that we were really interested in, and we've helped. We've looked at that, and that's helped inform our own. I hope that answers your question.
Just a quick follow-up, Chair, if you wouldn't mind. But also it's worth making reference to the fact that, am I right in understanding that you've got union agreement with all these policies? So in effect, with no criticism, as well as being the best, the union support us in that position as well.
Thank you, councillor. Yes, unanimous union support for all of the policies.
Thank you very much. Councillor Purbrick.
Thank you, Chair. I saw within the papers, and I can't remember exactly which one, it refers to the changes from the Employment Act that went through at the end of last year. And I'm aware that what I'm about to say only happened on Monday, but with the statutory legislation going through around the partner bereavement leave, will that fit within this policy? And are we going to see this coming back to us before April when that comes in, or will that be an entirely separate policy? I just want to make sure, seeing as we're doing all of these now, that we are going to be prepared in time for the new legislation, which I believe will kick off on the 1st of April. So will we be getting that back? I can't remember if we got another meeting before the 1st of April. So how will we be dealing with that policy to make sure we're compliant on that new legislation? Thanks.
Thank you, councillor. And yes, we know that we need to make one very small amendment to this policy, which will be a legislative amendment, which we will need to make. We haven't had time to do it in preparation for today, unfortunately, but it will be within this policy. Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, just on the basis of that, does it make sense for us to not be signing on this policy? We know within, a few months it's not going to be compliant. Is it worth us signing off now, or should this be something that is actually pushed back for the wholly compliant policy? Because we normally only look at these once a year, or how will we look at that?
Sorry.
So one option, because it's a very small change that needs to be made, which I'm not sure I can articulate at the moment, and it is from the 1st of April. But what we could do is circulate that change to all members of this committee, so that we are then compliant from the 1st of April.
Yeah, we'll do that. Thank you very much. Sorry. Okay. Carry on, Michelle. We are making progress.
Thank you. Moving on to the next policy, which is the planned unpaid parental leave. The policy does reflect the new legislation that's come out, in that it's made it a day one right, whereas our former policy, it was after a period of 1 year service. So it has reflected that change ahead of coming into effect legally in again in April 2026. And again, it just included the clause, the family friendly clause that I've mentioned. So there were absolutely minimal changes to this policy.
Councillor Wakefield.
Can I just ask a question then? Right, so you could start your job on the 1st of June, and then you could say, right, I need time off in the school summer holidays, so I need 4 weeks off in the school summer holidays, and you could apply for it and get it. Is that how it works? Is that what would happen?
Thank you, councillor. Yes, from day one, you can apply for unpaid parental leave.
And you just get 18 weeks for however how long you work at the council. It's just 18 weeks, not 18 weeks per year, is it?
Councillor, sorry, no, it's not 18 weeks per year. I would need to go back and refresh myself in terms of if there's any other time constraints, but it's definitely not 18 weeks a year.
I think it's 18 weeks per child.
Thank you. There is an age cap as well, so I'm happy to clarify that. I believe it's 18, but I will need to check.
Is, I think, limited to 4 weeks per year.
Thank you, Chair. So the next policy is the shared parental leave. Again, very small change to this in that we inserted the family-friendly paragraph, and we just added.
I think you've missed out the paternity parental support leave policy.
Apologies, Chair. That's quite right. The paternity parental support leave, again, we included the family-friendly paragraph. We also added in the link to our neonatal leave information, and we included a section around the return to work and the right to resume your working in the same role on the same terms and conditions prior to taking that period of time off. No questions? No. So moving on, shared parental leave. Again, that's just the insertion of the family-friendly clause and linking it to the employee notification of shared parental leave form that we have.
No questions?
Thank you.
No? Okay.
So that completes the policies that we are asking the committee to endorse, the reviewed policies, but we do have one new policy. And the new policy relates to the fertility treatment policy. This has been heavily consulted on with external, we've approached external other councils, had discussions with them. We've done a lot of work with our parental employee network, and they've been quite critical actually in informing this policy. This policy was particularly supported by the unions, and this is recognising that we have staff who need time off for fertility treatment. So it gives up to 3 days paid leave for fertility treatment appointments.
Okay, any questions on this, Councillor Purbrick?
Yeah, just seeking clarity really around the surrogacy element, because is that for somebody who is acting as a surrogate or for either parent or both parents who are using a surrogate for the purposes? Because I don't think it's particularly clear whether it covers it from both angles, and I just wanted to understand that.
Thank you, Councillor. And I'm happy to clarify the wording a little bit in the policy if that's helpful. So that could be both, because it could be the surrogate, it could be the employee is using a surrogate, but the employee wants to attend those treatments with them. So yes, it could be either, and if it would be helpful, I'm happy to try and make that clearer in that sentence. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Any of those, Councillor Wakefield?
Yeah, I'm pleased to see this because I think it's a really difficult time for some people, and it involves a lot of hospital appointments and all sorts of things. I've experienced it in my working life with employees, and I think I'm looking at the paragraph which says 2.6 employees may not want colleagues being made aware, and this is the difficulty. A particular person I remember dealing with had to go up to Bristol for 8 o'clock in the morning and then come back to Taunton to work because she didn't want everybody to know what was happening. But very difficult to fit that in with carrying out your duties. But if you did do it, then other colleagues might say, well, why aren't you here? You know, very difficult. So I think we need to be aware that not only the employee, but also their line manager needs to know how to present it to the rest of the team if, as may often be the case, they don't want other staff to know what is happening to them or what they're undergoing. I mean, that could be the same with any sort of treatment, and you can say this person's having hospital appointments or whatever it is, but that doesn't stop people wanting to know. I'm afraid that's the way it is. So I'm glad about paragraph 2.6, but I do think there may be an element of training required for people in that position if they're trying to, I'm talking about the employer actually there, the line manager, in dealing with something like this, because it is very sensitive and it's can be very heartbreaking. And in fact, this particular employee told me I wasn't her line manager, but she told me because she didn't think she could tell anybody else. And I was worried about her at the time. So I think, you know, this is I'm very pleased that they've brought something in, but I think it's going to be hard to do it in a way that keeps the information completely clear, away from the rest of the employees, if you see what I mean.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you, Chair. We absolutely agree, and which is often coming back to the earlier discussion about the differences between policy and guidance. There will be guidance that also supports this policy, but also what we are looking at within HR are running lunch and learn sessions with our managers and employees around our policies. And in fact, we'll be launching one in the next few weeks, our first one. And that's all about informing all of our staff that these policies exist, who they're for, and signposting them to guidance. So I hope that addresses the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Councillor Purbrick.
I'm really glad to hear that, because one of the questions I was going to ask is actually some of these policies will hit people at a really difficult time within their lives, when the last thing you want to be doing is getting on your company's website and trying to find a policy and figuring it out. So I would ask that on top of the guidance, particularly for those that are around the more compassionate areas, can we make sure there is a really, really simple something, and that all line managers have it at their fingertips if they need to send it to somebody, so that we are prepared to support people at the worst possible times that we can? Because it's great to have the policies, but I've been through it with somebody who works for me trying to get that stuff as a line manager at those times when you just want to support that person is really difficult. So I'd welcome if we can push for that. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor, and we wholeheartedly agree. And yeah, that will be the focus, is ensuring that staff are aware and they don't have to go looking. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Redmond.
Thank you, Chair. It's also hopefully it's a helpful statement. I think I want to thank all the officers for their efforts in these policies and bringing them forward to us. I think it must be seen as Somerset wanting to be as inclusive and beneficial for our employees and staff as I know want to be. So the changes need to be welcomed in that way, and the officers' efforts to if it helps, I'm happy. I don't know whether you would take them individually or take them en bloc, but should you wish to take them en bloc, I'm happy to propose that we accept them, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Redmond. That is very helpful. I was hoping we could take them en bloc unless there was a reason to take them individually. I've got a proposal. Do I have a seconder? Unless anyone else desperately wants to raise any other points, in which case, Councillor Deschamps.
I'm very happy to second if you need a seconder, but I just want to make the point that the paper references HR committee in October 24 and members wishing to continue the process followed under the LGR work stream. So to be provided with those updates of policy review work as opposed to new policies, and just check with you, Chair, whether that's something that the committee is still asking that we do, that we review where there are changes, as we agreed in October 24.
Happy to ask. I mean, I think the committee does want to do that based on the engagement we've had with the committee on all the things that we were reviewing. So I don't think there's any indication that we don't want to, but thank you for.
Then can we ensure that that is minuted?
We will ensure we'll minute that in the recommendations. So the recommendations are, assuming that the proposer and seconder, who are Councillor Redmond and Councillor Oakes, are happy with the amendment that we continue with the process as agreed in October 2024, then I will move to a vote. Councillor Purbrick.
And just to clarifying that we're going to get the circulation of the updated parental bereavement policy based on the legislation that's going through this week,
yes.
Just to make sure that's noted as well.
Yeah, that's been noted as well. Excellent. Okay, so all those in favour? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Michelle and the whole team on all work on that. That's been very helpful. Okay, that moves us on to item 7, which is the health and safety policies, of which we have 3 on this occasion. And I will invite Daniel Thomas, who is our Head of Health and Safety, and Benjamin Smith, Principal Safety Officer, to present the policies.
Thank you, Chair. I'll hand over to Ben, who will be presenting on this occasion.
Good morning. I would like to present the recent review and updates made to Somerset Council's health and safety policies, specifically HS23 electrical equipment policy, HS28 noise at work policy, and HS32 managing contractors policy. As part of this process, we have undertaken a thorough review to clarify responsibilities and improve accessibility. Importantly, while we have refined the wording and structure of these policies, we have not altered the core management practices or the Council's established arrangements for risk management. A key change is the clear separation of policy and guidance documents. Each policy is now presented as its own dedicated document, while all related guidance is provided separately. This distinction, along with updated supporting materials and templates, is designed to make it easier for staff and stakeholders to access and understand the relevant information. Following approval, the Health and Safety Service will ensure that all stakeholders are made aware of their revised responsibilities under these updated policies. In addition to these changes, we are actively developing digital solutions which will further streamline the way we deliver guidance, training and reporting. These digital enhancements will build on our existing systems and make it even easier for everyone to engage with health and safety matters. At this stage, we are recommending committee approval to formally implement these revised policies. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Benjamin, and welcome. Okay, does anyone have any questions on the electrical equipment policy? Well, first of all, does anyone have any questions on the overall approach? No, in which case, does anyone have any questions on the electrical equipment policy? No specific, oh, yes, Councillor Kendall.
No, I just reading this last night. The people who do the PAT testing, did I read correctly that it's a manager explains to him what he should be checking for, or do they get given a course to go on?
The PAT testing is outsourced to an approved contractor.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful. The noise at work policy, do we have any questions on the noise at work policy? Very droll, Councillor Redmond. Okay, do we have any questions on the managing contractors policy? No. You've done such an outstanding job, Benjamin and Daniel, that you've left us without any questions to ask you. So thank you very much. In which case, the committee is asked to approve the 3 policies that we've just covered. Do we have a proposer for that? Proposed by Councillor Redmond. Do we have a seconder for that? Seconded Councillor Fothergill. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much, Daniel and Benjamin, for that. Right, that brings us to item 8, which is we're starting to get ahead of ourselves in terms of the schedule. We may need some extra time further down the agenda. Item 8, the collective pay bargaining arrangements, and I would like to invite Michelle Anderson, our employee relations manager, as I previously said, to introduce this.
Thank you, Chair. The paper I'm presenting to committee is in reference to the collective pay bargaining arrangements for chief officers. Back in July, the committee asked for the opportunity to reconsider the current arrangements for collective pay bargaining for chief officers and chief executive. Those current arrangements are that we are opted out of the national pay agreements by the Joint Negotiating Committee, JNC. And instead it is this committee, the HR committee, that is responsible and acts as the remuneration body for the pay for these officers. So the purpose of this paper is to offer 2 options to the committee to make a decision on these arrangements going forward. The paper considers some of the advantages and disadvantages of both the options, those options being option 1, which is the recommended option, and that would be for the committee to agree to opt back into the Joint Negotiating Committee to JNC. So similarly to our approach with virtually all other staff in terms of Green Book arrangements that we spoke about earlier. The second option is to maintain the current arrangements, which is for this committee to make the decision around any pay awards for those officer groups. The paper sets out some advantages and disadvantages with both. Notably, there have been, we have done some research and we've spoken to other councils. We've also spoken to the Local Government Association and South West Councils. The option to join in, to opt back in particular, supports us from an equality point of view, the risk of any discrimination in terms of different awards in future being given, and it aligns with those national agreements. It would be therefore consistent with the with other councils, with the majority of other councils. We did look at what other councils' arrangements are. The vast majority of councils were already opted in, they didn't opt out. And my findings were that the councils that had opted out were unable actually to, a little bit like we experienced back in July, were unable to easily determine why they were opted out because it was historic. And they follow a very similar format to the format we have followed, in that they wait for the Green Book Award to be announced, and then they have a committee, as we do, to determine, and they award the same percentage as the national award that was given through the opted-in arrangements. So what we're asking the committee to do is to consider what they would like to do in terms of future arrangements. If I can hand over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and I will go first to Councillor Oakes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just checking that in 2009, we decided to opt out. And then having made that decision, we then gave exactly the same pay awards as if we'd not opted out. And now we're considering whether we want to stay opted out. And that's how we get in private eye.
That is my understanding.
I love councils.
Councillor Wakefield.
Yeah, my inquiry is about whether, I suppose it's probably Dawn may answer this, whether being opted out means that we've got more flexibility when trying to recruit staff at these levels than we otherwise would have, and whether that makes any difference in a situation where we haven't always found it easy to recruit staff at the top level for some of the top jobs, but partly probably because of the financial emergency. I don't know, although most other councils seem to be in a similar situation. But, does it make any difference? Because if it doesn't make any difference in terms of recruitment and retention, then I don't see why we wouldn't go back to what it used to be. But if it does make a difference, or it might, and what flexibility would we have if, say, we couldn't recruit somebody to a top position, and then we had to be flexible about it? Would it give us more flexibility? I don't know. Perhaps you could answer that.
Thank you. Yeah, the short answer is it really doesn't impact on our ability to recruit and retain in that way. This is all about the annual cost of living increases that chief officers get. If we're recruiting or we need to retain a chief officer, and the agreed pay scale that we offer is not market right and it's not comparable, we have a separate policy around recruitment and retention allowances or market factor supplements that we can apply. So that's separate to this, and we would still have that flexibility when we go to the market. If there was market evidence to suggest we could go outside the pay grade for that role, then as long as the business case stacked up and it had the right approvals as per our pay policy, then we'll still have that flexibility. But this decision, in my view, doesn't impact on retention and attraction in that way. However, if you look at it in the opposite light, and we stay outside of the nationally agreed terms and conditions, it's likely, I would imagine, that members might not want to go above what is agreed nationally, but you may want to choose to freeze salaries or go lower. And if locally members made that decision on whatever basis that they determined that that decision could be made, that obviously could have an impact on our ability to attract and retain people to Somerset, because there would be a nervousness, especially when senior officers come in on spot salaries, about not maintaining the market rate nationally if members choose to freeze it or to apply lower rates than everyone else is applying through the national pay bargaining. So it depends on what lens you look at it through, but hopefully that helps.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fothergill.
Thank you. So less worried about appearing in private eye and more worried about doing the right thing and how it's perceived by the residents. And it seems if you were to talk to residents, I think they would think it was very odd that we don't discuss chief executive salary at least once a year. And I think just linking back to Councillor Wakefield's question earlier, why do we do this? Because we're in a joint negotiating committee already, a joint negotiating structure already. So therefore, that's why we do it. That's the reason we'd have to give for why we're increasing the chief executive salary. And it just seems like we should be here once a year debating our senior managers' salary increases, and the public can see that we're taking it seriously enough to do that, and we don't have to go back with the standard answer of, well, we delegated it to somebody else to do. So I think from public perception, I think we need to keep it here. That would be my view.
Thank you, David. I've got Councillor Lation and then Councillor Purbrick.
I just wanted to say, Chair, that my lens is that recruitment and retention lens, and that's where my concern lies. I think it will become no easier to recruit the really best officers that we need for Somerset. And that's not a reflection on Somerset, it's just a reflection on the massive responsibilities that there are in those posts. And I completely accept people's views about salary levels. I would just want to say that the closer I have got to the working of our most senior officers, more admiration I have for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lation. Councillor Purbrick.
Thank you, Chair. And I would not like to suggest that I don't admire the work that our senior officers do, but I do at the same time question some of the wording actually in point 6, where it says may enhance recruitment and retention as well as equity across the organisation. It's a kind of finger in the air from what Dawn has just said to us. It could be one thing, it could be the other. And I think the paper is very heavily leaning towards suggesting that it may make a difference. And I'd really like to see the statistics between retention of senior officers in councils that are opted in and that aren't opted in before I get statements like that in a decision paper. But I think for me, the wider conversation is we've been doing this since 2009 and nobody really knows why. But we're about to go through a massive pay and grading restructure, none of which is going to happen within this financial year. Everything is being told is it's going to be different from 2027. So it would seem like a sensible conversation to be having this decision made in line with what we're talking about around all of our staffing paid and grade structures. And I think there is an element of abdicating responsibility to the centre so that we haven't got to have awkward conversations. And I wasn't here in July, sadly, I wasn't able to be at that meeting, so I don't know what the tone of the conversations were. But I think there is an element of us being responsible to our public and to not abdicating that decision, particularly while all these other changes are going on. And I would look at it freshly again once we've been through that wider process, but it feels like we're making one decision before we've looked at the whole. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Purbrick. Did you want to come in there, Dawn?
Yeah, I think it is obviously a really interesting conversation, and I don't want to rehearse probably where you're all coming from with it. I think that it's for me when we've really looked at this for the last 17 years, members, whether it's in the former county council or in Somerset Council, have simply followed the national pay outcomes from the national pay bargaining. So they've never used their discretion or their right or their decision-making authority to either go higher than that, to attract people, to be more attractive as an organisation, or lower in terms of maybe budget pressures, whatever other reasons, notwithstanding the implications of that. So I think when we're looking at the role of this committee, one of the things that we did is we went out to the other organisations to try and find anyone that had good criteria or a good scheme or mechanism that would enable you as a committee to make a more informed decision other than your local budget position about what you wanted to do with chief officer salaries. And because it's quite divisive and it's very subjective, and like most stats, it depends what you want to compare it against. When we've spoken to other organisations, they've all pretty much without exception just follow the national pay bargaining outcomes. I absolutely hear that that still gives you the opportunity to have that conversation. But in terms of the value of the committee and the value of members' time, it's fine to have that conversation annually. But if we continue the trend of the last 17 years of just following national pay bargaining, I guess the challenge back to the committee is the value of the committee in that conversation, being that there isn't a mechanism that exists anywhere where we can say that we can make a non-discriminatory decision about chief officers' salaries. So if members start making local decisions about chief officer salaries, there will be equality, diversity, inclusion impacts of some of those decisions. There is no mechanism to help you make that decision without that element of risk. So if you go away from what has been decided nationally, that will come with risks and challenges. So our professional recommendation to you as officers would be to go back into national pay bargaining, but it is purely a decision of this committee whether you wish to still have that discretionary element to consider an alternative pay award. And I think that was just something that I thought was helpful just to add, just from my perspective.
Thank you, Dawn. I've got Councillor Oakes and then Councillor Fothergill on my list. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. In 2013-14, we did do a full review, so a light touch review. Okay, a light touch review. I think this is to do with psychology and the way that we think about things. And we look at salaries and we think we understand them until we kind of relate them to our own worlds and everything else. If you want to do that, then you should do it right across the piece, every level. You should negotiate the lot locally, if that's the way you want to go. There is no great value. There is no what the public expect. This is a sudden change of attitude when all morning we've talked about what's best for our staff and their needs and looking after them fairly and being an exemplary employer, and now a move to outside. I don't think that's the way to deal with this. And I do think a bit of common sense, because if the public said you said you were going to change, but then you didn't change, and that's been 17 years, we could argue there's no point in this change because we're going to go on doing no change. So it's a debate. I don't understand why originally it happened, and the evidence suggested the original decision was actually a mistake. So we're in the position where we now have a new council. Things have moved on. Tidying this up makes perfectly good sense to me. I don't think it should be something. I see regularly people criticising our chief executive's salary, and I think you don't know what you're talking about because you don't know what the chief executive does. We spend time with the senior officers and we have an insight into what they do. But if I were to compare the salaries within the organisation I work compared to the scale of staff, the scale of responsibility and the scale of budget, a chief executive is massively underpaid here comparatively with the sector but with a different business in the private sector. I think it's just one of those situations where I personally would rather opt back in because it's a nonsense that we're out. And I have no desire to do what people may expect me to do rather than what I think is right, which is if we're always relying on people actually to negotiate that, why not just go along with that? And it makes more sense to opt back in because no argument's really being made that there's any evidence that we would benefit from this because we haven't benefited in 17 years. And the world's been quite entertaining in that time. And we've had a whole change of senior officers at that time. And we've recruited some very good staff. So it's almost why change it when it works. But actually, I can understand the tidiness attitude of opt back in. If we stay out, you can do your review, but history shows that nothing will change. I understand that. So I'd actually propose we went with the option dot back in.
Thank you very much, Councillor Oak. So that's a proposal for the recommendation, recommendation 1. But I've got on my list, I've got Councillor Fothergill and then cancellation. So Councillor Fothergill.
So 3 points, just picking up Graham's most recent point about the chief executive and pay, and I can defend the chief executive's pay, and I can continue to defend it while I set it. If it's set by somebody in London, it makes it much more difficult to defend because I've not been part of that decision. So I do think there is something about local accountability. Second one is just coming back to Dawn's comment about there is risk. Well, the risk has to be managed by the information that the officers provide to us as councillors. That's what they're there to do. And I'm sorry, but we can't take a decision because officers can't give us information on risk and how we mitigate that risk. That's got to be a fundamental to decision making. And the third thing is, I think I'm the only person here in the room. Perhaps Sari was as well in 2009. I don't know. I might be the only person here. But one of the benefits.
If you keep looking around, the microphone stops picking you up. Just so you know.
Well, maybe I wanted to do. But my point is, one of the benefits of being in a local authority is they keep minutes from meetings. Have we actually been back to the minutes of that 2009 meeting to find out why this decision was made in the first place? Because it'd be quite easy to do. It's a matter of record. But I would propose that we move to a vote, and I'm very happy to propose that we stay as we are.
Thank you. So we've got a proposal for option 1. We've got a proposal for option 2. For cancellation next on.
Chair, I just realised when I spoke earlier, I didn't mention unitarisation and the workload since vesting day, well, on the run up to vesting day, but particularly since vesting day, where we now have a much smaller number of officers, as well as a smaller number of members, but the same amount of work or more has to be done. And I would put the stress on or more because of the financial position that Somerset Council has been in since very soon after vesting. And I would also want to just bring up mention of fairness. So in all of the policies, we've talked about fairness in how we treat people. And so I would say if we have national pay bargaining, I personally like the idea of fairness in how everyone in the organisation is treated from the top to the bottom of the pay scales. That is not top to bottom of the people, but of the pay scales. Thank you. And I will second.
Thank you very much. So
option 1. Option 1.
Yeah. So, well, I'm treating this as a proposal by Councillor Oakes, seconded by cancellation to go with option 1. If Councillor Fothergill gets a seconder, which I think he's about to, I will treat that as an amendment. So we'll vote on that, and then we'll vote on what we're left with. Councillor Purbridge.
Thank you. So based on what I've already said, I won't rehash it, but on accountability and timing, I think it's the wrong timing. I will second Councillor Fothergill.
Thank you very much. I think we've discussed it enough. All that is left is to vote. So on the amendment, which is Councillor Fothergill's proposal, that we go with option 2, all those in favour of that? It's 4. All those against? That fails. So all those in favour of option 1? 6, 7. And all those against? 7, 3, and abstentions, and 1. So that is clearly passed. Thank you very much for giving that such thorough consideration. The members need a 5-minute break. No? Yes? No? 5-minute break. 5 minutes. Right, thank you very much. We must now reconvene. Okay, thank you very much for all of the work you have all done this morning. We still have a little bit more to do before I can let you all go home. So we recommence with item 9, which is the pay and grading programme update. And I would like to invite Nicola Hawayak, our interim HR workforce transformation lead, to give an update.
There's a lot of discussion, thank you, a lot of discussion that's taken place with scrutiny, with executive, and we did an all-member briefing at the end of November around the pay and reward programme. But this is the first time that we've come to this committee to provide a fuller update and not just as part of Dawn's overview of the work of the team. So what I wanted to do is just take the opportunity to run through the programme of work that this will be covering, what we've done and what's coming, where we're at in the programme. And then I also wanted to do a little bit of a deep dive around a decision that we're working through at the moment in relation to which job evaluation scheme the council will use moving forward. So, and then obviously open for any questions. So apologies, this is a lot, there's quite a lot of detail within this, but we started working with our strategic partner, Corn Ferry, in September, and they've been doing quite extensive work going out and talking to service areas. So in addition to the information that we've provided them, they can actually get a really good understanding of our organisation, the services that are provided by the organisation and the job roles within that. So the last few months has been a lot of gathering of information. We've also, excuse me, started conversations with senior leaders around looking at some of the strategic framework that the ongoing work will fit within. So we're looking to develop job families for the organisation. We're looking to agree which roles we'll be including as part of our sort of role profile catalogue. So we'll be reducing the number of jobs that we evaluate to the ones that we have now. And the conversations with the senior team has just been around some of the options around how we might do that work and starting to develop our thinking around that. So we're now in the position where, and the other piece of work, which is we'll go into in more detail, has been around really assessing and researching the job evaluation schemes that are sort of the main job evaluation schemes used within local government and consulting with the trade unions so that we can make an informed decision, or that Duncan is able to make an informed decision around that, but we'll go through that in some more detail later. Throughout all of this work, and not just around job evaluation, we have set up a joint working group with the trade unions. So we're meeting on a very regular basis with trade unions so that we can consult with them around sort of all aspects of the programme as we work through. So, as I say, we've been doing all that research work now. That will all be coming together and we'll be working through so that some proposals can be made around the job families that the council uses moving forward, that we look at the format of the role profile, which may not sound that important, but actually that's really helpful for us to determine, because role profiles are not just used for evaluation purposes, they're used to support recruitment, they're also used to support individual development. So we just want to make sure that the approach we take around that is the right for Somerset Council moving forward. and as I've mentioned, the catalogue of role profiles. So I think we've currently got about 1,600 different role profiles within the organisation at the moment. Other councils that have gone through a similar process to the one that Somerset Council is now going through have reduced that to sort of 400 or 500 roles. And that's on the basis that, you know, there are quite a number of jobs that are very similar, very alike. We can match jobs to those fewer role profiles. It doesn't stop us making distinctions when we come to recruitment and through performance, but it makes it much better for people to have visibility around how their role sits within the organisation. So the framework that we'll be developing will look at roles within the sort of service areas and the job families on a vertical basis, but what we'll also be able to do is that horizontal look across, so we can see how jobs compare across the organisation, which helps with development. It helps people understand sort of why their role has been, you know, evaluated at the level it has, because we'll have better descriptions around the different levels that jobs sit at right across the organisation. So once we've made some initial, and it will be initial decisions around that, we'll move into a period where there'll be extensive engagement again with the service areas, because we'll have a really good sort of, you know, a really good starter for 10 that we'll need to go out and test with the organisations. So we'll need to sort of develop, finalise the role profiles. We'll need to sort of evaluate the jobs, but that won't be done in isolation. We'll have to do that work very much with managers and their teams, so that we're ensuring that all the information that needs to be taken account of is taken account of. So that will be quite an intensive piece of work for the organisation. And what that will give us, the outcome around that will be that we will have a set of fully and newly evaluated roles that are ranked against the job evaluation, you know, using the job evaluation scheme or schemes that we agree to use. And that will give us the information that we require to start developing a pay and grading structure and options around a pay and grading structure, and for us to start modelling what that would look like, and looking at sort of costs around that compared to sort of the existing structure we've got and the costs aligned with our current pay structure. So that we're aiming for that to be able to sort of start doing that modelling over the summer. So from August onwards, really, we'll be able to start doing that modelling. So although it feels like, you know, quite a period of time away, you'll appreciate the work that we need to do, and we need to do that in a way where people are involved, that work is, that we've built up trust. People know that the work we've done is very credible, so that when we start to do the modelling, it's based on really good information. And we'll also be looking at sort of some of the wider pay policy and terms and conditions for the organisation. Once we've done the modelling around the pay and grading structure, and there'll be extensive engagement with all stakeholders, including members, around that, because obviously that's when it gets really critical for the organisation. But once as an organisation we've agreed our preferred model, that's when we'll get into formal consultation with the trade unions. So we will be continuing to consult with them. We'll be sharing as much information as we can with them. We want to be as open and transparent as we can be about the work that we're doing on this, so that when we get to a stage when we're moving into collective bargaining, that they sort of know why we've got to where we've got to, and what it is that we're proposing. The reason we need to do collective bargaining is if we're wanting to change terms and conditions, and particularly for those staff who have tupied into the organisation or tupied into Somerset Council, that would need to be part of a collective agreement with the trade unions, or there are alternative ways of implementing, but that would definitely be the preferred route for implementing any changes, contractual changes. You know, obviously there are other legal considerations we need to take account of as well, and ensure that we have got, you know, we're meeting the sort of technical requirements from a legal perspective to be able to make those changes. we then would need to go through trade unions. You know, if we reach an agreed position with the trade unions, they would go out to ballot with their members. They wouldn't want to sort of, they couldn't make that agreement without having the support of their members. So we need to allow time for that within the programme. And once we've gone through that whole process, that's when we're in the position of actually sort of confirming the outcomes with staff. And going through, you know, any appeals, which you would always get in this sort of process. So people, once they know the impact, there will always be questions raised and things that we need to sort of review and confirm. So I know that's a very quick run through, but I just thought it would be helpful to give an outline of the work that has been doing and really just sort of why it's going to take the time that it is going to take, because you know, there is a lot of engagement, a lot of consultation we need to do, not just with trade unions, but with all key stakeholders as this process progresses. And Helen, I must give Marcus as well. I'll just give recognition that there will be a big piece of work here as well around our HR systems that you're going to hear from the work that's happening around success factors. But you know, you'll appreciate that once we've agreed new grading structure for the organisation, that will all need to be set up in our HR systems as well. So that will need to be a piece of work that we manage very carefully as well. So still fairly early days in the project. We're on track at the moment. We'll talk a bit more about the job evaluation decision at the moment. Once that decision has been made, that will really help inform us around developing the detail for the next phase of the programme. So whilst we've got an outline plan, there will be some sort of differentials depending which scheme we went with. So we'll be able to now do that detailed planning once the decision is made, and contract for any additional work that's required for that stage of the programme. But everything at the moment is on track. I think we've gone through everything that's in that list, but I'm happy to sort of pick up any questions around that. The other thing, just sort of I wanted to flag as well, was the key risks that we've identified through the programme. All of these risks were agreed as part of the executive paper that was signed off by members in early November. These are all the risks that we are monitoring through IdeaGen. So these are sort of available as part of our regular reporting. I think, you know, they're all pretty self-explanatory, but we know that the big risk that the council here is aiming to mitigate through this work is around equal pay. So whilst the council has no claims at the moment or any challenge around equal pay, what we want to ensure is that the organisation is kept safe going forward, and the way for us to do that is to ensure that we have updated all our role profiles, we have evaluated those, and we're very confident that that has been done well for the organisation. So before I moved into the job evaluation, were there any sort of specific questions that members wanted to pick up on around programme outline aspects of it?
Councillor Purbrick and then Councillor Hobbican.
Thank you, Chair. Just really around the programme, it's really detailed, great to be able to see all the stages that are happening, but wondering where the democratic touch points are. And in terms of decision making, is there anything that comes to full council, or is it all executive decisions? It'd be interesting to maybe see a column on there if there are any decision points as well. Thank you.
Yes, so the key decision will be made right at the end of the programme from the member perspective. So that's the point where we will be looking as part of actually the pay policy statement in 2027 to get the formal sign off of the new pay and grading structure. But there is lots of engagement obviously up to that point, and this committee will have oversight of the work that we're doing, and we'll be bringing reports on a quarterly basis.
So in that case, are we talking about M11 is where that decision comes in April 27? And how does that work with pre-election period decision-making abilities? We've got an election in May.
I may defer to Alan.
Sorry, just to throw it.
So the way the programme is currently built, essentially the full council in February 27, just as you are doing now, you would review that in January and then review that ultimately to the pay policy statement into February 2027 in advance of pre-election period. So that's where you would be setting it as members. In addition to that, we haven't yet determined this, but it's likely to require, in my view, an update to the Section 4 report, which you remember from last financial year. That was a key document around the structure. So an update on this through the Section 4 will probably be required as well. But that will all trigger at the February council meeting.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fothergill.
I think mine was a very similar question. I'm not even sure why I'm asking the question, and I'm not sure what the answer is going to be, but I will ask it. And just picking up the point that's just been made, presumably then it would have to be agreed before the budget was agreed, because it would have an impact upon the budget for the following year. So there is an implication here for the MTFP for 27-28. So it would have to be agreed at that February and before we agreed the budget. Just leave that one there for the moment. But recognising there is an election and who knows what the outcome will be, at what point does this become agreed, or could it be unravelled by any party? I'm not saying any would after the election, or does it get put in? That's the question I've got. I just want to know, if we're going to do all this work, can we be confident that it's going to get implemented?
Thank you, Chair. In essence, and in summary, yes. Once the decision is taken at full council, you are then instructing officers to complete that and implement that pay policy statement, and that's what they would need to do. If there were a change in administration, a different direction associated with that, an instruction would have to be issued to officers to make that change, and a programme of work in order to make sure that it was safe to do so would have to be then developed by officers and represented back to executive or whichever committee structure was there in place. So in terms of the risk is noted, but it's necessary in order to mitigate the larger risk, which is one of equal pay claim, if we don't resolve this matter.
Thank you. And my point about we would need to agree this before we agreed the budget in 27-28.
So the budget point is part of that. So the implications associated with it would need to be factored into the budget, and provision is already being considered as part of that budget process in order to ensure that if there is an additional pay, if there is a pay increase as a result of this, that is then factored in as part of the budget decisions, and that's will be a clear line as part of the budget setting process.
Thank you very much. Councillor Redmond.
Just a procedural thing, Chair, really, please. This was obviously indicated to be a verbal update. I welcome the fact that there are slides available, but can we remember that not everyone has the same reading ability across the board, and if we're being expected to digest something quite deep in a short period of time and comment on it, then it may be some consideration to be able to share those slides beforehand. And following on from that, can we please share the slides, please?
Yeah, taking that on board, and sure can we share the slides? We can share the slides. That will happen. Councillor Lation.
I think this has been really interesting and really useful, understanding how that plays out, particularly with the election year. And I wonder whether in the very near future, whether an all-member briefing would be really helpful on this, and where the milestones are in, those democratic process dates are in as well. I think it's even more interesting than I'd realised.
Yeah, we'll take that on board, and we'll make sure that we schedule another all-member briefing relatively soon. Any other comments on this before Nicola moves on to the next bit of the presentation? No?
where we're looking to make a decision on the job evaluation methodology. So this decision, as part of it, obviously, as head of paid service, will be a decision for Duncan to make in consultation with Theo as lead member for transformation HR and localities. As I've mentioned previously, sort of the implementation of the job evaluation schemes that we use will be the council's key mitigation around future potential for equal pay risk. What we need to do is that all jobs are fairly ranked based on their job evaluation scores, that there's no bias in that, and that we're sort of meeting equality requirements. What we also want to be able to take account of is that the job evaluation scheme needs to be able to take account of the responsibilities of all current roles within the organisation. So that's right from sort of bottom to top of the organisation, and be adaptable to fairly evaluate new and evolving roles. So roles across, well, not just within Somerset Council, but across all councils are changing and developing. So whilst we still continue to have a lot of quite traditional roles, as councils are getting smaller, and the roles are developing and changing in a different way, and we want to ensure that the job evaluation scheme that we use is able to take account of that without compromising anything about the credibility of the scheme. We also need to sort of ensure that the job evaluation scheme is able to sort of fully assess that, as I've said, that mix of traditional roles and lower level roles that are traditionally female dominated. So that's really important, and any scheme should be able to do that, and to do that fairly. What we also want to look at as part of the job evaluation methodology is that the outputs will support the development of the pay and grading structure going forward. So that's, as we've said, that's going to be a big piece of work. We're going to have to do modelling around that, and we need the outcomes to be able to sort of support us with that work. Could we move on to the next slide, please? Sorry, I'll move on as quickly as I can around this. So the options that we've been looking at are the three sort of main schemes that are used within local government. GLPC scheme, which is currently used by the council for roles up to and including grade 11. The NJC scheme, which is the scheme that has been jointly developed by the LGA and trade unions. And we've also been looking at the Hay scheme, which is currently used by the council for all jobs at grade 10 and above. Just a bit on context. So the job evaluation processes, we know that it's not very well understood at the moment within the organisation. Whichever scheme we use, we'll need to address those issues so that we can ensure that people understand the scheme we use and the outcomes of those schemes. Nationally and locally, all the Green Book trade unions strongly support the use of the NJC scheme. As we've said, that scheme was jointly developed by the LGA and the trade unions, and that's their national position. What's important to note, though, is that, and although this seems to go back because it's 2003, the Local Pay Commission, they did confirm that sort of there shouldn't be any objection to other schemes that employers might want to use, so long as it meets and provides the equivalence in terms of scope, fairness and ability to meet the equality requirements. And the other point I just wanted to make is that obviously this work is part of the wider work that's happening around transformation. So, it's going to be really important that how we work with the trade unions on this, excuse me, supports that wider relationship that we're going to need with the trade unions over the cultural change work over the next couple of years. We've done a big piece of work on this. We've looked at sort of all the documentation that is available on the schemes that we were looking at. We've spoken to people within our own organisation who both manage the scheme but also are customers of the scheme. We've spoken to sort of London councils who own the GLPC scheme. We've spoken to the LGA, we've spoken to Corn Ferry, so we can get information from them about their schemes. And we've also spoken to other councils who use a variety and different mixes of different schemes. We did determine a basic gateway around the equality requirements and meeting the principles outlined in the NJC Green Book. terms and conditions, and we believe that all of those three schemes meet those gateway criteria. Sorry, are we able to keep forgetting because I've got my slides here. If we just move on to the different schemes. And one more, yeah, that's it, thank you. And if we could go to the next slide as well, please. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to ensure that whichever decision we make, that we're able to be really transparent around on the basis that that decision has been made. So we worked with the trade unions to develop a criteria that we could assess all of those schemes against. And that's the bullet points of those different criteria that we agreed with the trade unions. So all that research that we did, all the conversations that we've had has been assessed against those criteria that are outlined in the slide. And we also had some discussion with the corporate leadership team to get a perspective from them around what was felt to be most important for Somerset Council so that we could put some weighting around the criteria and the information that had come back. So that's the sort of process that we've been going through. As I say, the decision hasn't yet been formalised, and once it has, obviously what we'd be looking to do is to provide an update to the committee, but we're hoping that that decision will be made by the end of this week or certainly very shortly. So, very much.
Thank you very much, Nicola. And can I just ask the monitoring officer just to explain, again, that decision-making process and why it sits with the chief executive?
In short, in line with Section 4 requirements that are set out, it's the chief executive's role to be able to organise the staff, to be able to set out the pay, the grading, and the structure associated with that to deliver the priorities that are set by you as members. It's firmly in their remit to do so. So things like accommodation, resources, and anything else that's required to perform that role. The role of members is to have oversight of that Section 4 report, but also then particularly in relation to any budgetary implications associated with it. So that is the role of members, to look at both the policy framework and the budget implications of that, not how staff are organised or effectively the structure in which they are paid, the framework in which they are paid. That is a matter for the chief executive.
Thank you. Councillor Redmond.
I've got a number of questions, but just following on from Alan's comments then in relation to, so what is the purpose of it coming to this body today? Is it it says to consider and note, consider what, influence what, or is it just this is what's happening, the chief executive is making the decision, thank you?
So, Chair, as part of the kind of broader position that was set out at executive as part when the decision was made to commence this project and commit resources to it, it was determined at that meeting by executive that this committee would have oversight of the programme. What Nicola's outlined this morning is essentially that programme. Once it is commenced as part of the final decision around pay and grading, it will then be this committee's role to consider the programme moving forward and any issues or risks that emerge from it. So it is oversight of the programme, which is what the request of executive has been made to this committee.
Sorry, Chair, forgive me, and Alan, I apologise. I wasn't clear there. I understand the response in relation to the plan and the role, but the most recent slides that talked about the JE process and the process that the chief executive will decide to use, was that just for our information? Do we have any influence over it? So
you're absolutely correct, through you, Chair. Absolutely correct. It's for your information.
Okay, we'll move on then.
Councillor Wakefield.
Yeah, forgive me for asking a question that may have been answered when I wasn't listening properly, but you're really saying that the various job evaluation schemes, which are used in various different places in the country in different ways, they're kind of equivalent, but there must be a difference. And it may be in the way they're formulated, or it may be in the way that they operate, but I wasn't sure that I picked up what the difference was.
Yes, so you're absolutely right. They're all valid schemes, which is why I was saying that gateway criteria, which we still wanted to assess ourselves as an organisation. So, you know, they wouldn't be being used in councils currently if they weren't all valid schemes. But they are designed in slightly different ways. So there are some different benefits around each of the schemes. So, for example, with the NJC scheme, it's very sort of transparent. It's very clear and easy to explain how the NJC scheme works and what it assesses. So when you're talking that through with staff and involving staff, that's easy to explain. When you're looking at the Hay scheme, for example, it is generally sort of deemed to be it's more an adaptable scheme because of the way that the job evaluation scheme has been designed. So it's not just used within local government, it's used within other organisations. So it is more adaptable in sort of the range of jobs that it's able to evaluate for an organisation. So what we've done is we have done a detailed assessment using the criteria that was outlined in the slides to look at all the available information that we've got to assess against those criteria and what the differences are between them.
But were they using one of these in Birmingham?
They were, but I think it's fair to say that any challenge that has been made around job evaluation schemes, either through sort of the equal pay claims or any other tribunal, that it's the application of the scheme that has been the problem. It's not been the schemes themselves. So that's why, you know, obviously our application of whichever scheme we choose is going to be critical to ensure that we don't get any challenge.
Thank you. And back to Councillor Redmond.
Sorry, I think it's important to make a few points that were, so just a point of clarification, first of all. I wasn't able to read all the slides. So if I get it wrong, please accept my apologies. The three options that are being put forward to me looked a bit like one was tier 11 and above, one was tier 10 and above, and one was across the board. Now, as my assumption being, if the Hayes was picked, hypothetically, it would be applied to a certain number of roles, whereas the NJC one would be applied to all roles.
I mean, that's what we currently have. Sorry, Dawn.
Yeah, if I just come in here, and apologies because, you know, that was a very quick fly through. What we've got here, three schemes we were considering, GLPC, NJC and the Hay scheme. What the slide refers to is what the council is currently using. So the council is currently using the GLPC scheme for roles up to and including grade 11, and is currently using the Hay scheme for all jobs at grade 10 and above. When we've looked at this for the programme, we've looked at what is the ability to do something totally different. So we've looked at what other organisations have done as well. So, for example, the NJC and the Hay scheme could be used from top to bottom in terms of roles, from the lowest rated or scored role right up until the chief execs. But it's very unusual for the NJC or the Green Book scheme to be used for chief officers. So what tends to happen is in the majority of organisations that use NJC, they go up to a certain level and then they use the Hay scheme for their chief officers. That doesn't mean to say that we haven't considered NJC for the whole thing or Hay for the whole thing. We didn't recommend the GLPC scheme as part of this, but we have done a thorough analysis of the GLPC scheme as well. So the two schemes that are really under consideration are the NJC and the Hay scheme, and there is lots of sort of different ways that could be included for the council. So there is a very detailed piece of work that's happened over the last few months and the chief executive has all of that sort of detail to make a more informed decision about what is the right scheme going forward for Somerset Council, particularly in the light of the fact we're a transforming organisation and we need a job evaluation scheme that isn't just fit for purpose for now, but absolutely is fit for purpose for the future and enables us to be quite agile as we introduce new roles into the council, you know, particularly with AI and all of the the changes in the external environment. Our services, the way we deliver services, are going to continue to evolve rapidly and at pace, and therefore we need to ensure that whatever solution that we go forward with, and either scheme will be fit for purpose for the council now, but also considering what are going to be the pros and cons of each scheme for the future. So without going into any more detail, they're the two schemes really that we're giving the most consideration to, but the chief executive has yet to make that formal decision.
Thank you for the clarity. You articulated in 2 minutes you under-articulated the size of the decision when it comes to the process that we're talking about and the work that's gone on beforehand to get to this point. Still, I'm sorry, I don't understand so in effect, is your team making a recommendation to the chief executive as to a direction of travel, what to use? What options are on the table for the chief executive to make the decision? How broad is the decision likely to be? And I think you indicated it's likely to be relatively soon this week, I think, was the outcome. So again, what is being put forward to the chief executive?
The chief executive has a number of options to consider. There has been a paper that's been written in consultation with the trade unions. The trade unions have also put forward statements from each of our 3 recognised trade unions on their preferred option and why. So he has all that information as well. And yes, the chief executive will ask us as the professional officers what our professional recommendation is, which we will be providing to him. Ultimately, there'll be a non-key decision paper that will be produced, and that decision will be made by the head of paid service in consultation with the lead executive member. Obviously, Councillor Buck-Philip will be involved in that decision-making process. But yes, we will be asked for our professional recommendation, but he'll also have the views of all of the trade unions as well, and the research and papers and the analysis that's happened over the last couple of months.
So I won't be able to I won't hold you to it, but hypothetically, are we likely to end up with a similar position that we're in now, potentially with, let's say, the NJC being used for the lower range going forward and the Hay being used going for others, or are we talking about Hay or NJC?
It's we're not recommending that we stay the same as we are now. We are recommending that we have a change. We've put a number of options forward. The professional recommendation that we have given from the officers, which I am able to share with you, is that we would recommend to the chief executive that we use the Hay scheme for all roles across the council. The trade union's position is that they would prefer us to use the Green Book, the NJC scheme, and all of the reasons, pros and cons, what other organisations are using what schemes, the implications of that for Somerset Council will have been given to the chief executive, and then that decision is his.
I understand, and again, we're being asked to note this, but I think it would be wrong if I didn't try and explore and understand where we're going in this, particularly considering the conversations we've had over the last few items. You know, things like exemplar, working with the unions to agree a way forward, and forgive me for quoting the Deputy Leader of Council, that we should, when we talk about the top tier pay, we should be, from top to bottom, should be treated equally. And I think that that's something that I would hope would be considered in this, because, again, without going into too much depth, the unions are supporting the NJC position, which is a generally approved position. It allows for flexibility, transparency, and all the bits that we need. hypothetically, there may be some issues with the Hay process that other councils have encountered going forward, particularly being the fact that they elongate some of the processes because of the non-transparent nature alleged of some of it. Again, it's just hypothetical. All I'm saying is I would hope that in the spirit of going forward with the best possible start, that the chief executive would consider bringing as many people and officers, employees with them as possible. But I note the comment, Chair. I'd have liked to seen it beforehand to have a better chance to read it. There we go.
And to be absolutely clear, whatever scheme is decided upon, it's absolutely imperative that we wish to, as do the trade unions, continue to work really closely together right the way through this programme, including the implementation of the determined scheme. So we have a working group as well as our formal meetings with the trade unions, and they will continue over the next couple of years, you know, right the way through during and after the implementation. So yes, all of those factors are clearly the chief executive is very aware of them. He has also offered an audience with the trade unions, which we are trying to organise. Well, an audience, that's my terminology, but he's basically said he's happy to meet with them again this week if they would like to have a further conversation with him before he makes his final decision. So that's just being arranged at the moment. So yes, he's mindful of the cultural change programme that we are on, the importance to build trust and confidence with our trade unions and our employees, and that is an absolute priority for us as we move forward.
Thank you very much, Dawn. Councillor Fothergill.
Thank you. I'm struggling a bit with the governance here because I'm being on the agenda. It's a verbal update, and we've had a formal presentation of a number of slides, a lot of information coming out. We're now finding even more information through questioning, and it turns out there's a report that's been written that sort of summarises this, which has all gone to the chief executive, which, you know, could have been shared. I don't know. But so I'm struggling to work out whether I'm now in a proper debate about the process and a paper and where we go, or I'm just being told what's happening, in which case I'll just sit here and listen. And I'm struggling with the governance of the whole agenda item, really, and what it is that we're being asked. I'm happy to take part. I'm happy to have a conversation, but I'm not sure that's what it's on the agenda to do.
We have been asked by this committee to keep you as involved and, well, as informed as possible on our transformation programmes. The pay and grading, the SAP HR success factors are two today that are on the agenda, where we are just giving you an information update. There is, as much as that will be frustrating for members, because you may say, well, what is the point and why are you doing that and how can we really have an informed discussion? There are definitely some learnings we can take away, that if we are going to give a verbal update on quite a complex matter, that to share with you the slides beforehand, I'm sure would be helpful. So apologies that we've not done that. We can do that going forward in the future. The idea was that these were just 20-minute slots. They're quite short agenda items, purely for this committee to be given an update on the programme.
Slot, but that's not what we've got here.
And but what we're trying to do is, obviously, with the allowance of the time that the chair is given for this item, trying to be as transparent as possible in answering members' queries and questions, because I think otherwise, if we were to shut this down very quickly, or I was to mention it in 3 minutes as part of the end item on my workforce update, I think we'd be fairly criticised going forward that you would not feel very well informed about the progress on this programme. So there is a balance to be had, but I think we can take that away and look at how we do that differently. This committee initially was purely set up for reviewing policies, and we made that decision sort of when I joined, really a couple of years ago, that we wanted to open up the scope of this committee, and we very much value the insight, the feedback, the challenge, the questions that we receive from all committee members and everybody, you know, that attends these committees, because it gives us a richness that we wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to get on these types of programmes, which are more officer led.
Thank you very much, Dawn. So just to be clear, this is, as are the next two items, simply updates to inform us. There are opportunities to ask questions or raise concerns, but that is what these are. Councillor Oakes.
I think the frustration may be due to the fact that employees come under like terms and conditions, and we're spending time reading reports, making decisions on elements of that. But the one area that could destroy the council, based on Birmingham's experience, we get slides at the last. I'm unhappy that we didn't get the slides in advance. I would have liked to have thought about this and had some good questions. And I accept the councillor, Alan Jones, his statement that this is purely a decision for the chief exec. Everything else virtually this council does, the councillors take on the responsibility for that. On this one case, my understanding is if this goes wrong, the chief exec is gone, because it's not a council decision. It's a decision by the senior manager. And I feel uncomfortable with that because I like the partnership working with the officers, but I understand if that's what legally has to happen. It just doesn't feel, we've been talking about maternity rights and things like that, and these fall, to me, it all falls the same. That's just it as in a sense the governance issue, but also quite where members fit into this. It just appears we don't. But that's a feeling.
Okay, Councillor Lation, you wish to say something? Then.
I do, please, if I may. I think if we stopped referring to the chief executive and referred to the head of paid service, it might make a bit more sense. I really want to push back on your reference to Birmingham, because I think we had explained earlier about the scheme and then how that scheme is used. And I think we really need to be clear that nobody seems to be blaming the scheme that Birmingham used. And I don't want to go any further on that at all. And I just want to make the point that last February we had an additional extraordinary full council meeting, which was at the cricket club, if I remember. And that was where the paper that Alan Jones refers to as Section 4 paper was considered, and that came at the end of restructuring work, and that was the paper of the head of paid service, and that was not a member decision. That paper was the decision of the head of paid service. So I think we are going through that same process. I completely take your point about how important this is to the future of the council. And I'm really glad that as an HR committee, which used to be an HR policy committee when I first sat on it, and it had a very, very limited view of what happened in the council, and I definitely welcomed that opening up to HR committee. But I think we do still have to be really clear about where the decisions are that the head of paid service takes and where the decisions are that are member decisions, and that clarity. I think it's really helpful that members of this committee have brought that up today.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lation. This is an item to note, and we have asked questions and discussed it and expressed frustrations over the governance, but the governance process is the governance process that it is. So I think we've probably given this as much time as we have today, but the frustrations and the comments are noted. So thank you very much, and thank you very much to Nicola for presenting. Brings us on to item 10, which is SAP SuccessFactors HR system, and it's over to Helen Thomas. We are now running quite badly over time, which is entirely my fault. I don't know if there are any slides on this. There are some slides for this one. Okay.
Okay, slides. Yeah.
Just awaiting the verbal slides.
Lovely, thank you very much, and good morning, members. Are these up? Perfect. Just as a point for everyone to note, I am accompanied this morning by Marcus Watkin, who is our payroll and compliance manager. Marcus has been the lead for the project and the implementation of this, working closely with our external partners. So he will be much more able to answer any technical questions than I am, but I'll certainly present some of the background and context of this project. So the current SAP system, which is the system that we use, is our payroll system, was implemented in 2009. As you can imagine, it's therefore quite out of date, and it is quite difficult to use. It is coming up to its end of life in 2027, and there are support issues from 2026 onwards. The decision was taken to move and change the payroll system, upgrade it. We have taken the decision to move to SAP SuccessFactors. This is basically an upgrade of our existing system. There is good financial reasons to do that in April 2026 due to licensing issues as well. So that was the decision that was taken at a previous stage. SuccessFactors, because it is essentially an upgrade of our current SAP system, means that it is also the lowest risk option in terms of moving, particularly at this sort of timescales that we have in place. It does also allow us to recruit at implementation stage and integrate a recruitment option into this at the initial stages, which will help us with reducing duplication between payroll and recruitment systems, both for managers and for candidates. Move on to the next slide, please.
That slide, did you mean April 26th?
So it goes end of life in April 27, but the support it starts to degrade from April 26.
April 25 in your slide, and you said resurplus once restructure completes in April 2025, but you mean April 26, don't you?
No, that's a reference to the staffing restructure and the need for the need to have fewer licenses for fewer staff post April 25.
Yeah, so sorry, yeah, so the after the restructure that went in place in April 25, there is a need for less licenses, which enabled us to take some advantage of reduction in the need for licenses and financial implications if we implement SAP SuccessFactors in April 26. Apologies if that's not clear. Thank you. So the benefits of SAP SuccessFactors is that it is a much more modern system. It is cloud-based. It is much more intuitive for both staff and managers to use. It allows us to streamline processes, which gives managers more time to manage and less time involved in system administration. It also gives us the opportunity to redesign some of our processes. The key IT approach for these sorts of projects is really to adopt, not adapt to these processes. When we brought in SAP in 2009, there was a lot of redesign of the basic system done to adapt the system to our processes rather than vice versa. That's created a very complicated system. The approach is very different this time. We are adopting the system as it is and adapting our processes to fit the system as opposed to vice versa. That allows it to be much simpler. It allows us to streamline processes, and it's much easier in terms of user friendliness and the use of the system. Sorry, can you move on? Thank you very much. In terms of some of the sort of more practical benefits of this system, it does allow for better process automation. That's really because we can integrate different systems that we currently have separately. That means that workflows can be set up, the automations can be set up. So again, it requires much less interaction and input from managers and staff. When we talk about data accuracy there, just to be clear, we're not saying our current system is not accurate in terms of the information that is stored within it. The problem we have is that not all information can be stored in our current SAP system. So we have separate information, and separate information is held separately, which as part of this new system can all be held on the SAP SuccessFactors system. That will include in relation to some of the update that Nicola has just given you at a later stage, not at implementation stage, but at a later stage, we will be able to include things like job descriptions all within the SAP system so that it will integrate much better. The other key benefit of this new system is that it includes a mobile app. At the moment, a number of our staff who are not office based are not able to use the employee self-service options on our current SAP and have paper-based systems that they're able to use instead for things like leave and additional hours, overtime, things like that, all have to be done on paper-based systems because they don't have access to this to the current SAP system. SuccessFactors, they will. There is a mobile app that they'll be able to have, and you can have that on either a work device or a personal device. That will be able to be used for all staff across the board, including those staff who don't currently have access to the system. As part of our user acceptance testing, we did include a number of those staff who currently don't have ESS access and will use it, but will be able to use this via the mobile app in future. The feedback from those staff was wholly positive in terms of how easy the system is to use, what they're able to do with it, and how, having not used it at all, now how easy it is to get to grips with that system. So that's been incredibly positive and will be a big benefit for the new system moving forward. But for all staff, the current SAP system is quite old-fashioned, it's quite clunky, and it's not particularly intuitive when you think about all of the systems that people use for all sorts of other things, both work-related and personal. This is much more familiar and will look much more similar to the sorts of things that people use in all terms of all other types of system, and it's therefore much easier to navigate and much easier to use for staff. Thank you very much. In terms of the project status, the project is currently at amber status. That's not particularly unexpected at this stage. It was a huge amount of work to get done within a relatively short period of time, so the contingency got used quite quickly. We are still remaining on track for an April launch, however, and there is a huge amount of work that's being done currently, both by the internal Somerset Council team and also our external partners, Epiuse, to identify issues, resolve issues, test the fix, retest it, keep getting it in place. So we are confident that we are where we need to be, but the timescales do remain very ambitious. And it is moving at quite a pace. On Monday this week, we had an in-person meeting in Dean House with our external partners as well. Almost all members of the project team were there in person, which was really helpful. We worked through a number of issues there and resolved a number of issues, and were very clear about what issues still needed to be looked at and resolved. Many of those meetings have since happened, so it is moving at incredibly fast pace. The external partners, Epiuse, will be our support partners moving forward for SuccessFactors. The relationship with them has been incredible throughout, and we have had repeated feedback from them about how grateful they are for the Somerset Council staff. On Monday, they went slightly one further and said that the Somerset Council staff are the best they've ever worked with in terms of this type of project, in terms of knowledge, experience, and the attitude and approach to this type of project. As you can imagine, that gave them all a massive boost, particularly since we're about to ask them to do a whole load of overtime to get some of this through. Thank you, Jack. So in terms of risks and mitigations, there are some risks that are there in place, were identified early. They are quite typical for this type of project. There isn't anything that we've come across to date that we weren't expecting to be an issue or a risk. The two that are remaining, sorry, Jack, if you can move to the next slide for me. Thank you. Are around general ledger integration and data migration. General ledger integration in the current SAP system doesn't integrate at all. Not only that, but the general ledger codes in SAP are not the same as the general ledger codes in Dynamics 365. As a result, a conversion has to be done each month when we send the payroll. That has to be done in order for payroll to be run so that it enters into our general ledger. The new system will allow the correct codes to be in success factors as appear as they do in the general ledger. So that will be a big step forward. It has been quite complicated to get us to that point. However, this week they have managed to sort that out and fix that, and the testing has worked already today, already this week, sorry, and then moving on for that. So we're confident that they will sign that off this week. Data migration remains the outstanding issue, and the teams are working, both EPIUS and Somerset Council staff are working really hard to get that done and move that forward at the moment. We are confident we will get there. We just need to make sure that the work and the resources are in place to do that. That is required though, so for the final transfer of the data, to make sure that we pay people correctly in April, which as we've already alluded to, the value of valuing our staff, paying them correctly is kind of key to that. Marcus, if I can hand over to you for the next couple of bits.
Yeah.
Very quick ones.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. So just, I won't labour about the phase one stage. Helen's covered a lot of the points here. So just to say really that it's, we're building the platform, which is what, so as Helen mentioned, the adopt and not adapt focus on making sure we went with what we need to do rather than things we'd like to do necessarily going forward. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. Yeah, and so really just pointing out that the system that we're moving to gives us the platform for real transformational change, whether it's involving things like automation, AI, and also giving us a platform for future developments that will change the way that staff are able to work in the organisation. It will also give us the platform. It's not tying us into making certain decisions around big ticket items such as succession planning, learning, etc., those kind of big areas, but it is giving us the platform to be able to move forward with that if we wish to. But obviously that will be future business plan decisions to whether we want to go forward in that way.
Thanks, Jack. Next slide. So just very quickly on communication and training, the internal communications officer has been involved in this project team. The communications is about to roll out this week for leadership team, and then next week for staff, and rolling that forward with a particular view in terms of hard to reach start from those staff who aren't habitually office based. Those are being looked at separately, so things like the depot staff and the libraries. Unions and staff networks have been involved in developing that communication plan. Similarly, the learning support, it will all be hosted on our learning management system. People will be able to go back in and out of that. So if you need to know how to do something again for in the future, there'll be very quick guidance notes and videos to use for that. And again, we are working with hard to reach teams in terms of how we communicate with them and how we make sure that their training is done and fit for purpose. Thank you. That's us done in terms of an update. Happy to take any questions though.
Thank you very much, Helen. Thank you very much, Marcus. I've got Councillor Purbrick first, then Councillor Redmond.
Thanks. Two very quick questions. So the first one was on the mobile phone access, smartphone access. Appreciate some people might choose that they don't want to have a smartphone. Will there still be a paper or another system for those who may decide that not only are they not office based, but they don't want a smartphone and they work off of something that's technologically advanced? This is the first one.
Okay, so to come back on that one, The mobile app, you do not have to have the mobile app if you don't want to. It is more convenient for staff. For those staff who don't have a laptop, so are doing it, so the mobile app is their only means of doing it, they will need to do it that way. They can do that though on their work. So all of those staff tend to have work mobile phones, so they will just do it as part of that, and we will support them to do that process. Ideally, we don't want a separate process that does that as well, but recognising that there are some staff who may struggle with that, the support will be available for all of those staff to be able to do that.
So what we're saying is for somebody to be able to work for the council, they must either work in an environment where they have a laptop or use a smartphone app. There's no option for people who don't want to be doing either of those things for any particular reason.
I think what I would say is that we absolutely will need a alternative option in certain circumstances. So a risk definitely around disability, but I would also say we need to promote this as a transformational change of using the new technology in a world which is changing. Most people, I would say, have Facebook, have those kind of things that they would use, and they'll have a mechanism, and this will be no different in many ways in how they would access that. But accepting there will be scenarios which we will have to cover, yeah.
Just checking that there is the option, because there are people who are working back in the other direction. The second question was around the payroll cutover. It's not mentioned as a risk, so I presume that the risk of the and mitigations they're talking about are about the right money going over, not somebody at risk of not being paid at all on the first payroll after cutover. And if not, if there is a risk of people not being paid at all, should that not be called out more clearly in the risks? Thank you.
Thank you. So yes, so we are looking at payroll cutover as we speak. There are a couple more points in the timetable between now and the end of March for a go no go decision. We are aiming for a go decision, obviously, and everything is in place to support that. There is plans, sort of plan B in place if that is required. What we're talking about in terms of cutover and the data migration is making sure that the mitigations around data migration are essentially that's what's going to allow us to pay people correctly in April.
So the go no go will be if it's not ready, we can still pay people on the existing system if needed. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Redmond.
When we talk about massive changes to IT systems, a cold chill goes across my body, particularly when you hear, oh, you know, this is innovative, this is going to be, so you'd say it's SAP 2 or whatever the latest version is. So I think I know the answer, but I'll ask it anyway because it'd be wrong if I didn't. Are we the first to get this? So
no, and in fact we're quite behind the times for this. We're probably one of the later adopters of this. We're certainly one of the only people who still have the current SAP system still in full operation.
So that cold chill is warming slightly in as far as we're being towards the end of a queue. In this particular instance, I think is a good thing. Better late than never and all that sort of stuff. So are we happy that it's going to reach every corner of our business and everyone's going to be able to talk the same things? And it's hard to know that other people are doing it, but I'll ask the question anyway. How certain are we that it's going to be future proof?
Good questions. Thank you. In terms of are we going to be able to reach everybody and are we going to be able to pay everybody? Yes, absolutely. We can do that. There are, as we say, hard to reach groups who are not office based, where we will be looking at different methods of communication and different methods of access. So yes, those people will all be brought on board. So it's much better than our existing system. In terms of it being future-proofed, I mean, that was a big part of the consideration for going to this system. And as Marcus has said, there it's quite what we've implemented at this stage is kind of the basic building blocks of this system. There are lots of other things that we could bring in as part of this system as well that are supported by this, which can support some of the other transformation programs that are going on in the council. We may decide not to use these. We may decide to use some other system or a combination of the two, but the options are much better for this in terms of being able to future-proof this for some of the other transformation projects as well.
Thank you. Final question, Chair, just to be here, and forgive me, I know it's hard to ask the question with a number of senior executive members behind me, but I'll ask the question anyway. Are you and your team getting the support that you need to be able to be confident that you're going to be able to meet expectations?
Yes, is a short answer to that. We've had great support both internally and externally. There is a steering group that gives us excellent support and escalation routes in terms of any concerns or issues. And we have the external partners have been excellent in that regard as well. So yes, we're very happy and grateful for the support we've received.
Thank you very much, Councillor Oakes, and then Councillor Lation.
Mine's a very simple question, Chair, and that is the reason this isn't a straightforward process to go from one system to its upgrade, the fact the way we implemented it originally and made it more complex? A nod will do, that's fine, that's what I think.
Thank you. Councillor Lation.
I just wanted to make the point that this reflects really the process that we've gone through in revenues and benefits too, with that move to one piece of software with a massive data migration of something like 272,000 households plus all the businesses. So, but whilst I wish you a fair wind and good luck, I know you're doing a brilliant job, and I'm really pleased to have heard this update today.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for your questions. Thank you very much to Helen and Marcus for coming and presenting to us. That's been very informative. So thank you very much. Okay, that brings us on to the workforce update. Dawn, this is over to you. It's 12:50 and you have until 12:30.
I did wonder where you were going to go with that one. Understood, Chair. So you have had circulated in advance. It's not actually printed. I don't think that we've published these slides, but I think all members of the committee, I hope you've had these slides in advance, which means that the 9 minutes that I have to cover this and allow for you to ask me lots of questions should be achievable. So this workforce update gives you a snapshot of what our HR and OD service have been focused on and what we have actually delivered in Q3, which is October to December 2025. And importantly, it gives you a snapshot of what we're focusing on for Q4 between now and the end of March. As I say, this is quite a short, focused update. I don't think there'll be any surprises in there. I'm not going to go through 9 slides because I don't have sufficient time to do it. But I do think it's really important that as the HR committee, you have oversight, visibility, we're transparent about how the HR and OD service is focusing its resources, its time and attention for the best benefit of our organisation. So what you've heard today from a number of my colleagues that have joined me today in the room, and thank you team for coming along and leading on these items today, is the 3 transformation projects that HR and OD have responsibility for, which is the pay and reward programme that Nicola's gone through, the SAP Success Factors upgrade, which will be the improvements to payroll and recruitment, and our HR system for April 2026. And this work started really back in the beginning of 2025. So it's one of these things that there's an enormous amount of work that goes on in the background that members might not be aware of, with a view that it's very challenging to get this over the line for the 1st of April, but that's where we're at. And then the third big transformation programme that we're focusing on, which was back in the last quarter and for the next 3 months, and to be honest, for the next 2 years at least, is the Council's Culture Change programme, which HR and OD are leading on. We have support from Newton Europe as our transformation partner, and the Culture Change programme is going to be an integral part of the inspiring innovation work that happens over the next few years. The focus going forward is on vision, is on doing a in-depth cultural diagnostic for the council, but where we're really focusing our time operationally is to design and launch in March a new leadership and management development programme. This will be for all managers across the whole council. We're looking to launch it by the end of March, so we're quite ambitious. We have over 800 people that are line managing staff.
Andy, can you just open the door? I thought I heard it. there someone knocking on the window? Oh.
I think my time is up, isn't it? So, so the Leadership and Management Development Programme we're really excited about. This is going to be a real positive for our workforce. This is about ensuring that we are supporting the capability and the confidence of all line managers across the whole council, of which we've got over 800 people that line manage staff in Somerset Council. So we are designing that programme, and that will run all the way through 2026. In addition to that, we've got the commitments that we've already made that you've got sight of in our people strategy that we had approved last year. And we are ensuring that all of the key things within the people strategy are incorporated into that cultural change programme. So we have one overarching people strategy and programme for the council, and it sweeps up and brings into scope everything that affects our workforce in inspiring innovation and transformation. So the key things, I guess, that on slides 8, 9 and 10 are very at the end of this pack, are really just to give you some insight into what's going on outside of these major programmes of change. There will be an ongoing focus on how we improve equality, diversity and inclusion across the council. We need to sharpen up our strategy there, what our equality objectives are. We're doing a lot of work behind the scenes on improving and simplifying HR process. So we've talked today about policies, but there are a lot of processes behind that to make, I guess, the manager and the employee experience better across the council. Our business partners are working on having directorate workforce strategies in place by the end of March. So for each of our 5 big directorates, that's not just children's, not just adults, but all 5 directorates have a directorate people plan in place. So they have a very clear vision about how they're going to be delivering the 3 to 5 year people strategy within their directorates. So we're working on that golden thread from the corporate plan, making sure we've got our people strategy, and then each of the directorates are very aligned with ensuring we're focusing on the right things at the right time for our people. Improving morale, wellbeing and engagement will continue to be a real focus for us, as will be the control of the pay bill and recruitment and retention. We've run some big successful recruitment campaigns in the last 3 months, and we're continuing to have a very high demand on us for recruitment across all services in the council, and we are being quite successful at the moment in recruiting to hard to fill roles, but this is an area that does take up a lot of resource, time and capacity. So we just wanted to give you that assurance that that is happening in addition to the big transformation programmes. On the last slide, I think members last time asked for a bit of visibility on our KPIs. You won't be able to read this on that one slide, so apologies, it's quite detailed. But this is to give you the snapshot of the KPIs, the key performance indicators that are currently published either monthly or quarterly in the corporate performance reports. There was only 1 or 2 KPIs last year that we had for the workforce. We're trying to drive as much transparency as possible, so you can see that we're measuring what matters. There is an error on the apprenticeships one, where it looks fantastic that we've got 294 apprentices in the organisation. That does include schools, but we're already exceeding considerably the 100 apprenticeships in this council. We've got around about 190, I believe, at the moment, but that includes staff that are going on to apprentices to upskill, to have professional opportunities for upskilling, and around about 20 new recruits into the council on apprenticeship programmes. So the KPI information is there. When we have more time, maybe on another committee, if you would like to have more time having a look at the performance measures and how we're doing, then I'm very happy to do so. But I hope it's a useful canter through of some of the things HR and OD are really focused on delivering in the last 3 months and the next 3 months. Continue to be incredibly busy, and all credit to the team for what they're being able to deliver.
Thank you very much, Dawn. Councillor Fothergill.
the one thing that impacts all of us as councillors, because we raised it at the last meeting, and impacts our residents as well quite extensively, I thought would be included in a workforce update, but there's no mention of it, and that's planning. And just really keen to know where we are with planning recruitment, number of interims, number of vacancies. We were told last time there'd been a push on recruitment, but there'd only been 26 applications for 21 jobs. I'm just surprised that it wasn't in here, because it still remains a critical part of how we're being judged out there in parish councils.
Noted, Councillor Fothergill. We are trying to get away from just doing deep dives into particular services unless there is a requirement to have a dedicated agenda item, and that often really is dealt with in a separate committee to this one. The purpose of this workforce update, where we're looking after nearly 5,000 people in the organisation, it's so much broader than planning, and I absolutely understand the pressures that the council has on planning, but there are significant pressures in a number of our services across the authority, across children's, across education, across housing, across adults, across corporate services. We've been recruiting for an executive director in adults and housing. There is so much going on across the whole organisation that there is a danger as if we constantly deep dive into planning, it doesn't give you that more corporate holistic overview of what we're trying to do for the whole workforce. So I appreciate on every HR committee over the last few months there has been an ask, and I know in the last one 3 months ago we had business partner attend to give you a deep dive, and as Chris Hall, the executive director, has said, he's very happy to give members that information outside of committees on a more regular basis if you would need it. But I'm reluctant to keep focusing on one service when the purpose of this committee is to talk to you more generally about what we're trying to do on resourcing, recruitment, retention. If that's an area that you would like to have more time on, then we would definitely need to have that on the forward plan.
Councillor Lasham.
Just make the point that it's scrutiny tomorrow, and I won't be surprised if the same question is asked tomorrow at Climate and Place scrutiny. It's a perfectly valid question. It's just about.
I'm not sure it is, Liz.
Well, I
the answer I've just been given. I'm not sure it is a valid question, but I'll just need to go back and look at what the parameters of this committee are. But thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay. Moving on. Thank you very much, Dawn. Thank you very much to David and Liz. That brings us on to the HR committee work programme, which you should have in front of you. Do we have any questions or comments on that? Councillor Purbrick?
Yeah, my main thing really is carrying on from the last item. It would appear that it's a question that isn't just for planning. From the list that Dawn just talked about of the places where we are struggling, it sounds like there's a lot of places we're struggling, bearing in mind that the April agenda is considerably shorter than today's. Perhaps we should be finding out more about all those struggling areas as an overview of the committee, and it'd be nice to hear which ones aren't struggling and maybe lessons learned from where we're doing well and where we're doing less well, so we can have assurance on that. So that would be my suggestion. We've got a lighter agenda. Perhaps we can bring that forward. Also, I know this agenda, this work plan is for this year, but bearing in mind we have one meeting left this year, it would be nice to maybe see some ideas about what might be coming forward for the future year rather than only be looking as far as April. I presume the April one will have either nothing or the whole of next year, and I'd like to suggest that we at least have some outline of what it's going to look like after April at the April meeting, so that we can make suggestions for what the workload might look like for the following year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Purbrick. I'm perfectly happy for us to have an. Am I happy for us to have an update at the next meeting on recruitment in hard to reach, in hard to fill vacancies and that whole area? Absolutely happy with that. Happy to see the forward plan be extended further into the future. Very much looking forward to hearing about kinship carers next April. I care passionately about it because I am one. Any other questions on this? Councillor Redmond?
Forgive me, Chair, just reminding everyone that following this meeting at 2 o'clock, the Children's Scrutiny Committee has a workshop which everyone is welcome to, with the two really exciting topics that I'm sure every councillor will be able to take back to their communities and gain some experience from.
Yeah, and I encourage people to take part in that if they can. Unfortunately, I have to go back to my community and pick up my child. Right, unless we have any other contributions, just thank you very much to all of the officers who have facilitated our deliberations and discussions, and thank you very much to all the members who have participated. I hope some of you will be able to stay for the session that Councillor Redmond has referenced, and those of you who can't, I wish you a safe journey home. Thank you very much.